what were the micro moments that redefined that for you?
I would say there were three major micro moments.
Game challenges. What are some of the things that the synchronicities and the magic that happened that you totally didn't expect as you went on this life path?
Well, I think you're hitting the nail on it. That you know you're on the right track when when you're seeing synchronicity, right? You know you're off the track if you have to sit and work at it and try to, force it. Very successful and not living it. That we have all the power inside of us. And being 7 days in the darkness helps you realize you can feel amazing if you just get out of your mind.
Cheri here. Today on Masterpiece Cafe, we have a humble visionary mind, Brent Bruning. He's a hand analyst and he's analyzed over 10,000 hands. What he looks at is our soul's blueprint. And what I love about Brent's work is he helps us see what's possible in our lives, but he also notes what's holding us back. He helps people step into their next becoming, and he is an absolute joy to talk to and work with. I can't wait for you to experience Brent's humble visionary energy. And let's jump in. Going from something that was maybe not as meaningful into what you're doing now. And that's your masterpiece. And I can't wait for people to hear about your journey. Brent is this spiritual master. He is bridging the gap between science and spirituality by helping us understand our hands and how it relates to our soul's path. Welcome to Masterpiece.
Thank you very much. It's wonderful. I feel your enthusiasm just oozing out. Uh, so I'm very happy to share my transition. It's almost like a gender transition from one
Right.
life to the other.
Oh, yeah. I can't wait to hear more about it. So tell me, Brent, tell me about a time in your life when you felt this unspoken desire that you couldn't even voice that was meaningful to you. And what was it? And what happened when you started to pay attention to it?
Um, so I think we all have dreams. I've always dreamed in magic since I was very young, and I was astounded at the idea when I saw Richard Unger, who had read 80,000 hands, read the hand of my then girlfriend. And she said to me, "You finally understand me." Right? It was recorded. She wasn't in the room. I just gave him a handprint. And at that point, I was like, okay, so he was doing it in a very systematic way. And since I did 20 years in software robotics, just doing nothing but systematic thinking, I thought finally, something that doesn't involve any type of intuition. I was wrong later. It does involve being able to make these pretty advanced combinations. You need intuition there. But at the time, you need a foundation system. And so that gave me like the taste of blood, right? Once you've had a taste, you've seen it happen. And I thought if that would be the coolest skill in the world. And and why not? Why, what would that not be the coolest, thing to be able to walk in and be able to read anyone's hands and know their whole life pattern? And so that that competed with my software engineering. So I was always a unicorn anyway, if you know me from all my friends. So I would be going on a surf trip and be reading about Cairo and the palms and reading all these guys and just like, whatever, dude. But ultimately, I saw that there was an avenue where there's a demand where the people could want to know their life pattern. And I didn't want to read palm. I didn't want to be a palmist. I wanted to be a hand analyst, which is quite different. It's like the difference between Iraq and Israel. They're all both in the Middle East, but they're completely different modalities. So I wanted to be a hand analyst to talk about neurology. So
Mm.
I had to prove it to myself, Mr. Not Enough inside me. And Mr. Not Enough had to see that I had done enough to earn the right first, and then earn the right to charge, and then, transition
Right.
like an Italian woman does from one partner to another with one
Right.
vine to the other. That's how it was.
So tell us a little bit about this unfolding that is happening within you as you're stepping into, and I pose it as our masterpiece, our soul's path, our masterpiece. When we find that thing that really lights us up, is like, tell me a little bit more about that because you went from feeling like not enough and you had to fill that. So there was things unfolding within you as you stepped towards this.
Yeah, I think the biggest unfolding was becoming a father, actually, because that put the game into a very serious level. Because I now have to support two kids and a Romanian wife in Switzerland, in one of the most expensive places on the planet, and be a hand reader where people charge $50 at a fair. How the heck am I going to pull that off, right?
Right.
So, and I also have a culture. My father's a colonel. My sister's a diplomat, right? So, there's a difficulty in any way within my own family to be able to make that migration. So
Right.
I pressed against this um, pain of Mr. Not Enough, and I had to be enough, right? I had to. And so I didn't have a choice. At one point, there was no coming back. And I was like, and it was very frightening because I was not swimming very well. There was a month, for example, or two, where it was I'm like, I've got $10 and it's got to last 10 days, right? I'm
Right.
sitting here going, it's now the end of the month and I've just paid for last month and I still got bills to go. I was like really, really scared. And I was like, that's it. I'm going back to IT. So I was like, calm down, chill out, breathe, feel it, and get it together. You know what you need to do. You're not doing it. You're not going in and calling people that are interested in following up and all that. You just have exposure fear. So get over it and face it and feel it. And ultimately, I had to any more than, a bird has to figure out how to fly after being pushed off the nest. It really was like that bad.
Right.
And I was like, I don't want to. Now, now, now. And just you do it. You have to. And it was not days. I'm talking 3 solid months of just do it. You have to. And
Mhm.
credit card is, locked up and everything. Just do it. And you
Yeah.
got to go in there. And it was locked up not because of the fact that I was Mr. Not Enough necessarily. It's because I procrastinated on what I knew I needed to do. I wasn't an
Mhm.
adult or being a professional about it. I just believed, yeah, if I build it, it will come.
Yeah.
Just
It doesn't work that way.
ask
Unfortunately.
and care and, get into people.
Yes. How did you overcome that in the micro moments when you felt like you're talking about this, like I just had to do it? But for those watching that are in this very situation where they're like, I'm creating something and I'm leaning into something, and every time I go to do it, I do the things that don't really matter. What were the micro moments that redefined that for you?
I would say there were three major micro moments.
We're about to learn the three micro moments that shifted Brent from what he was doing, something that was successful on the outside, but wasn't fulfilling on the inside, into his masterpiece. Before we do, I want to tell you why I do these recordings. Masterpiece Cafe is about learning the unfolding of people from just achieving to living a life of peace, purpose, and prosperity. It's about following your soul's desire and ultimately your soul's map. When we live aligned with what matters most, we live alive. We are energetic, we're excited, and we have more to give to the world. After living a part of my life unconscious in the trap of modern success, what looks good on the outside but doesn't feel good on the inside, I believe that everyone has a humble visionary inside of them. that they have the ability to step into their masterpiece and live a life that's aligned to what matters most at any stage of their life. So if you've built, led, or created, and now you're ready for something more, something deeper, then I'm your gal, and I'd love to work with you. And if you want to know your soul map from your hands, you can work with Brent at his site. The power is in your hands.
Major micro. Uh, the first was that I had the smarts to finally get a marketing agency and a branding agency. And that means I had to get over my Mr. Not Good Enough and really get that I had to come up with some plan. Now, I didn't have money to invest the 30, 50,000 that was needed. So I had to be able to really make a barter system and create traction. That was the first step. It's like I had an amazing marketing manager named Atu Horace from Kane and Alicia, who was awesome. He really branded. So when the moment I saw my logo, I was like, I'm in. And he was just like this animated logo, and I was crying. I was like, this is it. And then his first video, I was like, now we're really in. Now I'm that guy. That's it. Right. So it was a good branding, I think, helps you believe in yourself. They were able to capture the legendary feeling that I was after, but I didn't have any skills to
Right.
be able to express it in an honorable way. They did. So they were able to do a lot of experimenting around, and we failed a lot, but we got into a very, very artful form of how to express hand analysis. Right. So that was micro moment one. Micro moment two is after failing significantly at reading people's hands enough to where they want to do the shift, which is, a higher product that I have, to shift people's life after they have their blueprint read. Um, I realized that I love talking. I guess you know that. I have some very
Yeah.
long-winded answers. And
Yeah.
and that love of talking is an addiction that is not doing my clients any favors. I had to shut up and get into questions. So when I saw that micro moment where they listened to some of my hand readings and were like, dude, you're just dominating. Shut up and get into the questions of what is the problem. Or they would just listen to me. I was like, well, how did the calls go? And I go, I didn't pull. Well, what was the problem? Well, I
Yes.
don't know.
Right.
And they were like, well, why don't you know? We've been telling you, if you don't know somebody's problem, how can you solve it? And you're paying to solve problems. So what did you do? You went sideways again. You went and talked about the art and history of hand analysis. And while everyone's amazed by the way you express yourself, all they were entertained, but they weren't, their life didn't change. They need you to shut up. Micro moment number two. Micro moment number three is when I had the realization that after doing everything, every other marketing way, and getting over to this fair and this event and referrals and email and all YouTube and Google, that my zone of genius is that when I do talk, it's when I get on stage. So once that realization happened, in exchange again for another, research work in exchange for some work that I did with somebody. They said, "Look, your zone of genius is getting on stage." So I had those three, and when you have those three micro moments, they just change the entire direction of everything. And then, out of that, I had the courage of like, okay, if I'm going to be on stage, then I need to have a booth. And now, if I have a booth, it needs to be sexy, and I need someone to, design it and try to make a big uplift. So yeah, so those things were like really pivotal.
Beautiful. And now that you know that that's your zone of genius, getting on stage, I saw, for those of you who haven't seen Brent speak on stage, I saw his presentation at Mind Valley U and his speaking, and it was really powerful. And that really is truly your zone of genius.
Thank
So
you.
I love that. I love those three micro moments. Those are really honest and vulnerable. And I believe that the universe and synchronicities overlap. So, as you stepped in, as you overcame challenges, what are some of the things that the synchronicities and the magic that happened that you totally didn't expect as you went on this life path?
Well, I think you're hitting the nail on it. That you know you're on the right track when when you're seeing synchronicity, right? You know you're off the track if you have to sit and work at it and try to, force it, right? So synchronicity is just like a date, right? When you hit it off, you don't have to follow up with telephone calls, right? It's just
Right.
so you got to be able to have a feel for that. So here's some key synchronicities. One, I was at He'll Play Love last year, and I was at the VIP lounge in the back reading hands, as I do. And the organizer of He'll Play Love said, "Did you read that guy? You got to read it." I said, "Sure." So I went up to him and introduced myself. And he launches into his story of how he's gone through, real ups and downs in his relationship, how he leads one of the biggest therapeutic centers or did in Switzerland, like 50,000 a week type thing. And I'm listening to his story and his, struggles and how he started and founded a darkness retreat, 7 days in the darkness now in Poland is VIP. I went to it again a week ago. And I'm listening to him, I'm like, well, there's a guy who's really searching for peace. And I was able to map out the fingerprints in my head. And I had my book with me and I said, look, I believe you have I'm going to draw out your fingerprint pattern before I see it because I know your story. And when you listen to people's life story, you can see the life story in the fingerprints. When I did that in front of a table of 8 people and I showed them everybody what this is what an arch pattern, I believe you have it on the index finger. And I showed them the 7 different fingerprint types. And I showed them that I had probably about 1 in 2 million of guessing this. And I did. That serendipitous moment created a satori in my life of an opening. And he said, you are going to a darkness retreat. And that creates a chain of love. Whenever you decide in those magic moments and you do it, in that whatever that is, the next thing is going to lead to the next thing. So that darkness retreat, as I went into it, if you don't know within, do it. Go look it up. Within
Yeah.
darkness in
Ooh, yeah.
an hour flight from Frankfurt into Potsdam, Poland. That allowed me to understand that I am magical. I do have a magic. I was glowing in the darkness in red and I wasn't hallucinating. I had my waist down in
Right.
just this crimson red. So
Ooh,
those things, create new openings, right?
yeah. Yeah. When you follow the energy, and I really feel like when you step into the challenge of following your soul's path, you step into that unspoken desire and you overcome the challenge. You keep doing it, even when there's no evidence you have that faith, then when you get after each action, there's these energy synchronicities that take you to the next thing. And you follow that energy, and it really builds into something truly amazing. Could you describe how it is now to live your masterpiece? Like this masterpiece life that you're living is your soul's path.
Mhm.
Oh, what kind of fulfillment are you getting? What kind of joy and peace are you getting? And even though you're growing, could you help people visualize that, these humble visionaries that want to step into their masterpiece?
Well, there's a few things to unpack what you said. I'd say, how am I living it? Well, I can tell you that I was very successful in not living it, right? I
Right.
was not enjoying it because I was like, customer service, this is Brent, how may I help you? It's like a Zoom. I had 10 hours of people, wanting their hands read, and I was burning out because it was feast or famine, right? I was like, now is it. So that was the big part, is that when you have gone through such a famine and then you're like, I'll take it, whatever you got. Come on, everybody.
Yep.
So that was the thing that was burning me out. And I even went to alcohol, was like, fine, Screw it. Let's do 70 hours of hand readings and drink whiskey in the weekends and do it again. All that was a basketball that just kept on, bouncing lower and lower. So
Yes.
once I got out of that really bad game, it was bad. I didn't like it. I was burning out. It was aging. I hated it. So
Yeah.
that transition point to recognize that my life deserves to be magical means that if you just take today, how am I mastering my life? Well, I have my hour of power in the morning. I have my kids that I get to, prepare breakfast. We hug. We start in the morning with big hugs. And then at 10 o'clock, I start my first appointment. And then I have a break for 30 minutes and I do whatever I want. And maybe follow up, maybe, I don't know, watch a dog on a skateboard on YouTube, whatever the case is. Or I go and most importantly, I'm now meditating and I do sage and stuff like that to try to clear the energy. Then the next one, and then a break, maybe for an hour, and then another one or a walk. Those breaks have created a magic so that by the time it's 6:30, 7 o'clock, and the kids are home and I'm present with them and I have the dinner and then I'm able to have a magical evening. I just finished composing music in my living room on a big piano and I love that. That's my soul. It's meaningless. It's always I'm always been on task and it's like, oh, is there one more email I can follow up? But
Of course.
that structure stuff, uh, creating a channel of blocking time and saying, I do not care. This is my time. And I know it's outside of the narrative of reading everyone's hands that are in constant demand, but I want beauty in my life. So
Yeah.
that's helped a lot, to be fair.
What would be the next level of peace and beauty and joy in your life?
Well, I got a taste of it this last weekend, having the reunion of all these people who went to the darkness retreat. And it has been channeled by Babaji, who is a very famous Indian guru, and that he's survived by his wife, and his wife was there, and she was giving a satsang to all the people that were there, and maybe 50 people sitting around in this multi-million millionaire's palace and grounds, and we're all just chilling out. And
Yeah.
I and what he was helping us realize, or what she was helping us realize, both of them, AJ, was that we have all the power inside of us. And being 7 days in the darkness helps you realize you can feel amazing if you just get out of your mind.
Yeah.
So I have been reading everyone's, not hands, I've been reading, 26,000 people's minds. And those minds, those patterns that are emulated through the nervous system that can be translated into a hand analysis show you what is driving you nuts.
Yeah.
And if you can step out of that into a new opening where there is no mind, that's spiritual energy, and you can ultimately still honor this egoic way of that your heredity seems to drive you into certain experiences with certain traits and strengths. But the more that I go into an overwhelm, which is what everyone complained about in the darkness retreat, is I did a darkness, but they went back into a stress pattern, whatever, is that you're going to repeat the same dumb pattern you have just at a greater level after you have
Right.
found your soul. But in the end, you need to set boundaries, and
Mhm.
out of those boundaries, recognize that you're, instead of looking for something on the outside to make you feel better, stop, remember, and it's like a candle. You got to really hold it. And it's really hard to do it when you're in a maelstrom of speaking every 2 weeks at a do event and packing and unpacking. So you got to remember that candle. And I forget it.
Yeah. I totally get it. It's a challenge that most humble visionaries have, and it's because we enjoy learning, we enjoy evolving, we enjoy growth, and so it kind of pulls us. And whatever level you're at, it pulls you to the next level. It's like a drug almost. You want to learn, you want to grow. And
Mhm.
I've found that in with my clients, like working on them really connecting with themselves and being in silence and being in darkness and really having those moments of meditation that they anchor in their lives in all those different ways help calm the maelstrom so that it can come from within you out instead of outside in.
Correct. Yeah, I would before I went to the darkness retreat in end of April, I had the good fortune of going to Serenity here in Zurich, which was a hosted by a Tibetan monk, and he said that the ground is not your feet, your ground's your breath, and if you can remember that uh, that when you start to get too edgy and you breathe in, try to think of the triangle going up. As you breathe in and breathe out, uh, um, say breathe in and then hold your breath and then breathe out. You're stimulating your nervous system. But if you breathe in and then breathe out and then hold your breath,
Mm.
so you're holding instead on the inhale, you're holding on the exhale. The triangle goes down, and that is your command of your life. And that saved me a lot from fear when I'm 7 days in the darkness where you're seeing stuff you're like you've never seen in your life. You just breathe in and breathe out. And that's the same thing when you're going through these crazy moments where you're like, man, I've got 70 people to meet at an apparel and I just landed and I've just got 6 hours of sleep. Breathe in, breathe out.
Breathe out. And you're right, it's that pause at the bottom of the breathing out to hold, which I first learned in an ancient yoga practice called Hatha Yoga, where we did the breath work where we push out at the bottom and hold. And at first, I found that to be the hardest thing to do. But it's actually one of the most powerful things I find for my clients to be in that space because the breath
You
is
tell
the
me
energy.
what are you doing exactly? You're breathing out through your bottom.
Yeah, so you're breathing in and then you're breathing out and then you're pushing out the remaining air and holding it there. So you
Okay, then
breathe
you hold
in,
it down.
breathe out,
Oh,
push
that grounds you. I feel it already when I do it.
through.
I feel the
And
weight in the legs.
yeah, and holding it there actually is harder than holding at the top of an intake breath, right? And
Hmm.
so it grounds you in a much deeper way. And it's something
Yeah.
you can do any time of the day.
Thanks for the tip. I am definitely going to apply that because yeah, that just adds another layer to what you're doing.
It
Love
does.
it.
You go, and then count to 10, count to 15.
That's
The
right.
longer you count, the less your brain has an impact on you. It's a really grounding. So with all of this, I know that the ripples that you want to create in the world are for people to get their own agency. My own ripples are that people are the architects of their lives, and for them to grab that agency at every phase of their life and unfolding of their masterpiece. So,
Mhm.
Brent, what are the ripples when you can no longer impact people and you have had this peace and joy in your life and you've created this and you've followed your soul's path? What are the ripples you'd like to leave behind for people to continue to get value from?
Well, the big distinction that I've learned in this lifetime is that with all these people doing vision boards, it doesn't really matter while you're in the sabotaging pattern. And my work over the last, since 2007, is to address and face these shadow patterns in our life and dissolve them so that we can elevate humanity. So it's on a very personal reason. I've seen the shadow side in my girlfriend. I'm like, what the heck is that? That's not the person I was with for 6 weeks. It's something I struggled with my whole life. I'm like, well, you are not the person that I thought. And I don't know where this is coming from, but can we get back to the other girl you were there is a technology now to understand what that is that I can see in the hands and people can break through. And I want this to be out there as common language that we have shadow sides and they're there to protect us. It's usually when we're driven by fear. If you're Hindustani, you would say it's a rajastic pattern or tamastic pattern. And that means you can't get the sattva, that green zone of happiness. And you still need to let go of that, right? So that that waves that I'm creating right now is to help people see that palm reading is or hand analysis is an incredibly important blueprint that we still, even though I I think I'm one of the best in the world who says, but it's still, we're in kindergarten here
Yeah.
in what we're able to understand. And when AI gets a hold of this, as people begin to adopt this into practices and their therapeutic practices, they will be able to recognize massive patterns of energy in their life. And they can then alter the course of their destiny through that. Until then, it's unconscious and you just call it and you blame your dog, cat, whatever.
Of course, and you don't take agency in it. How
Right.
does biohacking and our ability to shift our life versus in the ways, because I've studied biohacking for the last 15 years, I apply it. How have you seen that shift people's handprints, their blueprint?
Well, as you saw on stage, I was showing a lot of people that look about 10 years younger out in 2 weeks after I helped them understand what the shadow pattern was and helped them to lean in into the growth pattern. So you can see this on a tree. All right. You got a tree and then you got these tiny little sprouts and they're little budding and they're all green and they're loving. In other words, growth is youth.
Yeah.
Right. So if you can grow in any area while letting go old patterns or old stories, old complaints, old things, old things that have been long standing as I don't talk to my sister since 1999, whatever. When you let go of those stories, you let an opening of growth in your life.
Mm.
Then you can facilitate that growth with all of the NMN and mushrooms and chaga and red light therapy. That's what that stuff is for. But it doesn't help an ounce when you're 70% in your shadow. Sorry, doesn't.
Yeah.
So the biohacker movement is failing to recognize that
Mm.
as much as they promise, until they deal with uh, the limbic brain at the cellular level, that it's not just that one little orb in the middle of your brain, it's your entire body is trying to go in defense. And until you get out of the autonomous nervous system into a growth pattern, then throwing mushrooms at it isn't going to do a lot of good, in my opinion,
Yeah.
because I see it. It's not like something I'm trying to sell or anything. I have people who have been in 3 years of mushroom and they're so in their shadow and biohacking everything. And I am looking at it going, well, how is your life? How is the quality? How's the energy of your life? Are you still in this shadow pattern? Yes.
Yes. And I find that really fascinating because I studied molecular biology and epigenetics when I was in my master's
Awesome.
degree towards my
Yeah.
PhD, right? And
Yeah.
it'd be fun to just dive a little bit into the epigenetics of
Let's
transformation
go.
because when we dive into our shadow, we
Yeah.
actually turn on genes and turn off genes.
Yeah. So what is happening there is that you have a different language of epigenetics or different layers or different time spans within epigenetics. So you have an evolutionary scale and you have epigenetics, right? So epigenetics in short, if you don't know, if you're listening, you don't know exactly what that is a short-term pattern of life, right? So Bruce
Right.
Lipton is heading
Good way of putting it. Yes.
he's leading the game in that. And he shows the petri dish and he says, okay, you put Coke, cigarettes, and alcohol around it into some good genes, they may turn bad, right? So there's propensities within our gene structure to activate very dis-ease when under certain conditions. And if you get stuck in those conditions over a lifetime, which are outside patterns, they ultimately elicit a sickness response. Okay, fine.
Yeah.
What is amazing about it, we're now seeing is that you can't just say there's just epigenetics of everything outside and just genetics inside. In fact, it's an array. And there's long-term patterns and there's short-term patterns. And you can see what happened in the last 2 weeks in your hand, as well as what happened in the last 10 years, as well as what happened when you were born with it. So if you have a good time with ChatGPT and you go fingerprint patterns and epigenetics, you're going to be up all night because that's what they are. And so what is it? What is it? There's stress patterns of like insecurity and fight, flight, freeze responses around money because your great grandmother couldn't survive the potato blight and lost seven sisters. And all of that is now being translated into the fetus because of the eggs in the mother that are saying survive. This is not a time to be, crazy with money
Right.
or be an artist in Nazi Germany. So these patterns get handed down, but we've gone through an accelerated amount of evolution in the last 100 years, the last 20 years. So
Yeah.
these patterns, while biologically were meant to help us survive over several 100,000 years, but they're so outdated now. And
Yeah.
so that's why we're really struggling with this dumb thing. So yeah, so you're seeing different levels of the epigenetic layers in you, and you can grow those. What I haven't been able to do is change the fingerprint patterns.
Mm.
Right? So I can get everything. So and I'm on my way, right? So
Yeah.
I can see those short-term patterns. For example, I can change the hate lines that are coming out from your thumb into your palm. I can change those. I can
Right.
those are years, right? I can
Yeah.
change
Yeah.
people-pleasing patterns where your heart line dips down into your thumb. I can
Right.
change that, but I can't change principally the whole contour of your heart line that was developed at 9 weeks. And when I do that, then I know that I'm on my way into the fingerprints, which is about 3 weeks before that.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I think it's only a matter of time before you actually see that transformation with your clients and you're able to see the fingerprint changes. Because in my study within epigenetics looked at how quickly our genes respond to new environments, new environment internally and externally.
Both.
Yeah.
You have to do work on both levels, to be fair.
Right.
You said it best, right? That you have to change both environments. So in the
Yeah.
shift, I'm changing the internal environment, but in the hero's journey, which is the step after that,
Yeah.
which I didn't really go in that much into detail, but you are changing the entire pattern around you. So you're upgrading your life because there's no point in shifting and you're feeling awesome inside. It's like being on vacation in Hawaii and coming back to a complaining wife, right? You're
Right.
just going to collapse back. So you go into regression. So
Right.
that pattern of your life is ready to collapse you back, even if you have an amazing soul insight. And so
Yeah.
far, yes, you can change your soul contract in some way. You can evolve your relationship to it. But the Mr. Not Enough, if that's in your fingerprints, because it's a signal in you to say this is danger, right? That your amygdala for several hundred years has been trained for danger when you start to get to a certain threshold in your bank account. And it's just, you can't concentrate on see anything else. There's a very little amount of insight that can change that response until you really listen to it. So a lot of the work that I'm doing is just instead of releasing fear, face it, feel it, and let's bring it along. And
Yeah.
I got that from an Olympian. He said, look, you changed my life because I helped him, transition from Nike to a whole new life of being a marketing director. And and he said, you do it through fear. Look at the fear of what happens if you don't live your life and stop trying to reduce fear. It's
Yeah.
very, very important to bring it along because that's the stick as much as the carrot.
And you know that fear and excitement feel the same in our bodies. And so, one of the ways in which I ended up rewiring and reprogramming my responses to things, and now it's really amazing because my whole world has shifted outside from the internal shift that I did inside.
Yeah.
One of the ways that I did was in those micro moments and recognizing the micro moments and actually going towards those new micro moments,
Mm,
understanding where I was heading to and why, and actually seeing and feeling the pain of the results of that I had already achieved in my life. And I know not everyone has this gift of actually having something monumental in their life happen that takes them back to their essence and has them look so clearly at their life and see their patterns and own them. That being able to own the pattern, being able to see the new pattern, and being able to, in the micro moment, move towards the new pattern, not the old one. I've completely changed the people around me. the people that I interact with, and the way that I respond to things. And what's crazy is it almost feels like I'm a completely different person.
So if I was to reword that in my own language, what you got is to really sense those micro moments. You have to be out of your maelstrom of chaos and crazy thinking and reaction patterns long enough or temporarily enough to be in sattva. You have to be in a place where you can connect to that and look with courage in a Bob Proctor way that while your life has no evidence for it, with the faith of your love for your life, you can pursue that dream. The problem with that I see with most people is they can't even get to that green spot because they can't slow down because when they don't meditate, and even if they do, they come back to a life that's hell.
Right.
So how then can you get from that life right in the middle, which 80%, or I say most of people are 80% in their shadow. Sorry. I'm in Switzerland and even it's the most, greatest
Yeah.
place. Most people that walk in are 80% in
Yeah,
their shadow. That means
that's
that
right.
they're running an automatic fear pattern and they can't get out of it. While the rest of the time on weekends and, 6 to 8 o'clock, it's wonderful. And they're in a growth and they can do Satori and they do that type of thinking. But then it's back to the races.
Yeah.
And, I have a very personal, um, a personal reason to say this because my wife has struggled with MS because she couldn't get out of the pattern, and I could freaking see the pattern that she
Yeah.
was. I read it in her fingerprints, and here she goes, and she's just off. She can't slow down. So
Yeah.
try to get my wife, who is got a perfectionist set of 20 different roles that she's got to fulfill today. And she is not going to let go of one plate that you're spinning in the clown. You're not going to let go one of role because if you don't do the vacuuming and all of that and get the kids lunchbox and everything, if you don't do it, then you're going to disappoint yourself and you have to do it. Now get that woman to then find and connect to a micro moment and say, yeah, I'm going to live a life of pleasure. It doesn't work because your biology is just so gunning for this outcome. However, you can do it if you get out of your mind long enough. But the amygdala is running the show is and from morning with coffee all the way up to the end and with less asleep. So you have to be able to get out of your circumstances and out of your life story where your mind keeps getting the evidence. And there I would say do a darkness retreat or a vipassana or something where you can have yourself step away from your life so you can even ask that question.
Yeah, I would agree because it was a Kensho moment for me.
Yeah.
And
Oh,
what a
cool.
Kensho
All right.
moment does, right, of course, is it smacks you with the pain, right? So profound that everything stops.
What
And
was
you
the
can't
Kensho moment for you?
Kensho
What
moment.
was, yeah, what was it? What was the pain?
I created a design build firm. I had 35 people around. It was a healing journey for me to become a landscape architect and create environments for people to step into their healing. And I, in a moment, had all of that taken from me. The partners that I had built, the team that I had built, everything turned inside out. It was a deep betrayal.
Hmm.
And I ended up in my home with nothing that I was doing. Everything that I created destroyed. Everything got destroyed, like my social media accounts, my client,
Far out.
relationships. Yeah, everything. And but
Yeah.
in that moment, in that Kensho moment, what happened was you realize, like you were talking about with your love partner and your wife, that when everything goes away that you've built and everything you thought you were no longer exists, the essence of who you are emerges. And you understand that all of that was just, none of that really mattered. What mattered is the essence of who you are, that desire to grow and to contribute. And, I've always been kind of, a Star Trek fan and, into technology and science and nature, right? That none of that changed. And then you realize in that Kensho moment that nothing can strip that away from you. Those Kensho moments can be actually created. And a lot of times in transformational work, we're trying to actually create, in some way, a small Kensho moment for people to feel the pain to a level in which it shuts down and they get out of their head and into their heart.
Mhm. So the way that I address that, there's a pivotal moment in the shift, and it's really powerful that you shared that because that without the Kensho moment, you can't shift, right?
Mm.
So it is that you, and the way that that is done is that, at least the way I do it, and I think it's really effective, is that when you get a hand reading, we put the difficult pattern into a shadow board and you vomit up all the stress. Now, you don't even have to remember the hand analysis. You just say, what did my great grandmother stress about, who created, a stressed out mother who ultimately created and married a stressed out father who had came from his stress generation, and they made stress babies, and they ended up going through all these, and I ended up executing these stress patterns of not belonging and fighting and feeling not enough and not seen, and all the way to my marriage, and then business, and then this whole thing collapses, and now you finally get to the point that now it's today. And what I help people see is that they look at the pattern of anger and sadness and that they're avoiding, and the feelings that they're avoiding, and the energies that they're avoiding, and then even their power that they're avoiding. And you just stop and you copy and paste your life into the future. So if you've lived a beautiful 40 years and you look at that 80% of the time you've been in this dumb pattern, try to get it that you're going to be 80 and that the next 70 years you're going to be in this dumb pattern, right? Or for the next 35 years, you're going to be in this pattern. So in that, once you get that, you're like, oh, I know, I'm doing the
Yeah,
shit
no.
with you
Yeah, I
because
get
that's
it
what I'm
exactly.
paying you the money to not see. I'm like, no, this is it. In fact, it takes me forever and a day to get somebody to get out of their head to finally get to that moment. But then when they get to that moment, and I
Mm.
say, feel it and look it into the future and face it, that if you don't grow, you will, if you don't shift, you're going to be in that. And
Yes.
that awakening I hold for sometimes an hour and a half. And
Mm.
when you stay in that pain for an hour and a half, and I ain't letting you go, it's better. It's really, I've never been able to do it with myself. But when you can do it with somebody going, stay, feel it. And I can feel when you're 90% or 10% in
Yep.
through the shift. But it is that moment in the Kensho, the room begins to shift. The energy, a Kali enters the room. If you're Hindustani, the fire goes everywhere. You're processing karma. You're going through an incredible amount of pain, angry, suffering. It seems like generations, faces are changing. All of that happens over like a trip for an hour and a half if you really have some bad stuff to burn. But when you get to the other side of it, then the room feels like it's completely open.
Mm.
And then I go and read the whole shadow board again to you out loud. And you're like, no, 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 I got it. No, I got it. No, I know what I need to do now. And that's when you create your vision board. That's the reason why I'm not asking anyone to make a vision board until you have had your Kensho moment.
I love that. That is so beautiful, Brent. How can people work with you, and what are some things you're creating in the future?
Well, if you've been lucky enough to get this far, right? you you understand the wisdom. You're the reason why you're here,
Yeah.
because you're getting our language of Kensho, right? You understand that there's probably a a moment you need to pivot on, right? And so I wouldn't be leading people to the top of the mountain if I hadn't gone through it myself in a very, very painful and agonizingly relapsed and come back and relapsed. And,
Right.
in that place, I'm leading people to understand with goodwill, compassion in their life. And more compassion brings a sense of honesty and love in their life. And that can allow them to release the judgment or these patterns, which are judgment
Yes.
into a place. Go to the power in your hands. Let me read your hands. Book a biohacker hand analysis, which is the first button you see when you go to the power in your hands. And
Yes.
then What will happen is as
Yeah.
soon as you book, you're going to get my calendar, you get me, and then for an hour and a half, and you'll get instructions to send photos of your hands out in the sun. Yes, an iPhone can do it just fine to take the bridge patterns in your thumb and your
Yeah.
fingers and in your full hand and your face because
Yeah.
I want you to see how you begin to transform. And then I collect that. We meet on Zoom like we're doing right now. It's recorded. And when you record it, you're going to need to listen to it at least two, three times because there's so much information about your life pattern and it'll be relevant when you're 80 years old and still will.
Yeah, it will. I love it. I love the work that you're doing in the world, Brent. It's beautiful. And
Thank you.
thank you so much for being on Masterpiece Cafe. And we will, everyone, just go and get your hands identified and analyzed so that you can see your shadow pattern and release all those things. Because I know from my own Kensho moment and what I do with my own clients is help them see the end of their lives and the patterns and how they impact them.
Mm, that's it.
And
So,
when we are there, when we are at the end of our lives, we understand what's most important to us and we stop pretending all the things that we don't know. So, to everyone's masterpiece, thank you so much, Brent, for being on this. And the power is truly in your hands.
thank you. Great, great talk with you.
That was amazing. I look forward to seeing you. Bye.